welcome to the Iowa Gold Star Military Museum. My name is Greg Hapgood. I'm one of the board members here at the museum. We're absolutely delighted that you're here today to join us for a very special program commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima. It's a great pleasure now to introduce the board chair here at the museum, Bob Holliday. Despite the fact that he's a lawyer and a former football referee, he's a pretty okay guy.
Thank you, Carl, for that. You know, I got to tell you, though, after having been both a lawyer and a football official, there's a lot of people in this world who don't really appreciate me. I also want to welcome you to the Iowa Gold Star Military Museum and just take a couple of minutes and tell you about where you are and what this museum is and what its missions are. This museum was started by a mandate from the Iowa legislature in 1985, originally located in the basement of the chapel, which is right up the hill. In '93, the Department of Defense built a new headquarters building for the Iowa Guard, and so they let this museum move from the chapel to the former headquarters building, which is this one story right over here. And that allowed for 7,500 square feet of exhibit space. By the early 2000s, we're out of exhibit space. We had $10,000 in the bank. We've now raised $6 million. And we built this building. We now have 18,000 square feet. The problem we have is that we should have built it twice as big. I'm dead serious about that. Look around. Look at this. The public perception of today's military is as high, I can say this, as I've ever seen it as an adult and been able to formulate thoughts. That's a good thing. This museum does not exist to glamorize war. There's many of you in this room that know exactly what I'm talking about. We're not here to do that. But if you think about it, we live in the freest country in the history of this planet. And this military, our military has protected those freedoms. So our main mission, if you will, is to recognize and honor any Iowan, fellow Iowan, who's worn the uniform. There's no distinction here made as to time of service, peacetime, wartime, branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, rank. You can be a buck private or a 4-star general. We've had one or two of those people in here. Or race or gender. If you're Iowan, we want you in here. We want your story. Come back, bring your families, bring your neighbors, bring your dog. We want you in the place. We want people to recognize what our veterans have done for us. So that's who we are. You're here today for a real treat. The Keller family has a justifiable, great, proud history. You're going to hear about it. That's what I'm going to tell this group. I want the veterans here to stand up and be recognized. Please do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Greatly appreciate your remarks. Thank you for what you do here at the museum. A couple other introductions this morning. We have the incredible privilege to have an Iwo Jima Marine here with us today in the museum. Woo! Right here in the front row. Yeah. Frank is from here in Des Moines. He said that of the 35-day battle, he made it through 12 days. And toughest fighting of the Pacific Theater is what many people have said. I'm just honored you're here, sir. Thank you. We'd now like to present those or introduce those that are here to present today and share their stories. Brent Westemeyer is from Johnston. He's an amateur historian. He and two other amateur historians, Stephen Foley from Ireland and Dustin Spencer from California, were able to create a strong enough case to present the Marine Corps to have them reevaluate the identities of the Mountain Suribachi flag raisers. So Brent is an absolutely instrumental piece of the puzzle regarding who actually raised the flag in Mountain Suribachi. Dr. Lisa Ossian, PhD. She lives in Oskaloosa. She's a college professor, but she has an expertise in the home front here in Iowa, particularly during World War II, and she'll talk about the impact of this photo here at home. We have Keller Maurer, daughter of Harold Pikeller, who is one of the Mountain Suribachi flag raisers. was recently discovered as raising the flag, one of the 6. And she's from Brooklyn originally, but lives in Clarence, Iowa. She's a retired teacher. Thank you all for coming today. We'll start with Brent Westemeyer. We'll share about putting together the puzzle regarding the identities of the flag raisers. Brent?
Thanks, Greg. So my son plays football at Johnston 5-6 years ago. And when my father would come to the Quad Cities, served during the Korean conflict, I would bring him here, and he loved it here. He just loved it here. So I'm just going to start and talk a little bit about the actual Battle of Iwo Jima. So before I do that, I want to just briefly go through an article that would have been in the Brooklyn Chronicle in March of 1944. Sound right? Okay. Mr. and Mrs. A.E. Ward of Gilman were in Brooklyn recently and had a visit with Harold Keller, a U.S. Marine who was with Mr. and Mrs. Ward's son, James, at the time of his death, November 8th of 1943, in the South Pacific. In fact, the two boys have been together since entering the service. At the time James was killed, there were 8 in the squad who were guarding a mountain pass when they were struck by a Jap mortar shell. All of the boys were injured, but James was the only one killed. Since that time, Mr. Keller has been in a hospital in New Zealand until released for a 30-day furlough, where he got married. Mr. and Mrs. Ward felt a great satisfaction in having a detailed information concerning their son up until the time of his death. So I can't imagine. So just tells you a little bit about who Pikeller was, from being a man, part of the greatest generation. So with that, this obviously, he knows, this is Iwo Jima, right? Why is it called Iwo Jima? What does it mean in Japanese? Anyone? Sulphur Island. Sulphur Island, okay? From the top, it looked like a pork chop, and that's what a lot of Marines thought. Yeah, big old pork chop, you know, with sulfur and just a horrible place. But that is where they were going to go, and they actually landed on the beaches right here. Green Beach is where the 28th Marines landed. So why was this an instrumental strategic island to take? And there was some discussion of whether or not just to leapfrog it, not to go to Iwo Jima. Okay? So the admirals, in their conversations in September of 1944, Nimitz wanted to go there. And there was another admiral by the name of Ernest King who said, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's just go right to Okinawa. And they decided to take the island, and the reason is because it has 2 airfields. And those airfields were instrumental. So if you look at the Northern Mariana Islands, about 1,500 miles to Tokyo. So in the fall of 1944, B-29s started making bombing runs and bombed Japan, okay? But they were naked, meaning they had no little friends with them. They had no fighter escort. So halfway between Saipan and Tokyo was an island called Iwo Jima with 2 airfields. And they wanted to put on this island P-51 Mustangs so that those P-51 Mustangs, once the B-29s are going over, they would be able to make it and come back and escort the B-29 bombers to Tokyo. Okay, so that was the main reason why we wanted to take this particular island, really the airfields. There was radar here, so as the B-29s were flying over, they could obviously radio their home and say, okay, they're coming. So that was another reason, but really it's to get the P-51s on board. Okay, so this is the famous flag raising, right? Okay, what's the first thing that you notice about this particular photo? I can't see a face. No faces, right? Okay, which is going to be hard for identification purposes because you can't see any faces. And to be honest, the Marines today wish that there were no faces and there were no names attached to this because it represented the whole of the Marine Corps and the Navy, and everyone was flying in the air back in February and March of 1945. When I looked at this picture, I started to, talk about the reason why today, talk about 70, 75 years later, why are these discoveries being made? And we owe it all to a gentleman by the name of James Bradley. Okay, James Bradley's father, John Bradley, Doc, is said to have been on the second flag raising. He actually wasn't. He was on the first flag raising. I'll show you a picture of that here in a moment. So when James Bradley wrote this book, some guy in Iowa read the book and started looking at the pictures. I have a fondness for old photos, and I started just to see inconsistencies between this particular photo and some of the other photos that were available in this particular book. So the reason why these identifications happened 3 years ago and today has to do with the fact that this book was written. Okay, Piekeller's uniform, by the way. Okay, this actually came from the Baltimore Sun's archives. It's the same picture, okay? I want to read, it's the identification that was done on April 9th of 1945. Let me read this here. I thought I had it written down, just a moment. Okay. Identifying flag-raising heroes. Marine PFC Rainier Gagnon from Manchester, New Hampshire. One of the 6 men of the AP photographer Joe Rosenthal's historic picture of the flag raising on Iwo Jima has identified the other 5 men who participated in the dramatic event. Okay? So I'm going to go through, and actually it's important to go through the numbering process that the Marines use. This is number 1. Back row, number 2. Front row, number 3. Going to the back row, number 4. Front row, number 5. And then finally at the very end, we have number 6. Okay? Has anyone seen this particular old photo? Because it has the original identifications made by Rainey Gagnon. Okay? I'll go through them real quick. Hank Hansen, Rainey Gagnon, Doc Bradley. On the back side, we have Mike Strank. On the front side, we have Franklin Sousley. And then Ira Hayes is at the very rear. Okay? What's wrong with those names? There's only one that's right. That's what's wrong with it. Only Mike Strank in the number 4 position is correct. Okay? So again, I started looking at this photo, and I'm very, very interested in 3 different individuals because I can see them. This guy was always intriguing to me. He was very intriguing to me. He was also intriguing to me, and I'll show you here in a moment why. Okay? Notice that someone has written some names on it. Right? So Rainey Gagnon got to D.C., I believe, on April 7th of 1945 and was interviewed. A week later, roughly, both Ira Hayes and Doc Bradley go to D.C. So these are the identifications made by Rainey Gagnon before Ira Hayes and before Doc Bradley were in D.C. Okay? Ira Hayes wrote Mrs. Block. Mrs. Block actually is, Harlan Block is actually at the base of the flag. We'll see that here in a moment. But Harlan Block, when he wrote her in 1946, he said, "That is your son, Harlan Block. It's not Hank Hansen. And oh, by the way, Doc Bradley will back me up." So if you look at handwritten letters and you look at the handwriting, it looks a heck of a lot like Doc Bradley's handwriting. So someone knew that Harlan Block was in this photo, other than Ira Hayes. Because why would Ira Hayes? He knows that it's Harlan Block at the base. So I believe it's Doc Bradley who says, okay, it's either Franklin Sousley in this position, or it's right here. He crosses out Harlan Block, he writes Harlan Block down here. So I believe they knew, and actually they did know because Ira Hayes pushed it and he was told to be quiet. They're both dead, why does it matter? That's what he was told. Okay? This is the GungHo photo. This was the photo that just spurred me right out of the gate. Okay? Franklin Sousley is here. That's Franklin Sousley right there. He's holding up his M1 Garand. What does he have on the end of his M1 Garand? It's got a bayonet, right? Let's go back. Okay? This is supposedly Franklin Sousley. Actually, it's Ira Hayes at this point in time who's misidentified. Ira's here. Franklin Sousley was placed on here. Well, if I look at Franklin Sousley there, he has his M1 strewn over his right shoulder, but guess what? He has no bayonet on the end of it. And I was kind of like, those photos were taken probably 20, 30, 50 seconds, a couple minutes after. Why would he take out his bayonet and stick it on the end of his N1 Garand? Okay, now, Doc Bradley in this position, okay? Doc Bradley, open canteen cover. He was reprimanded for having a .45 Colt when they identified him. Why are you wearing a sidearm, Doc Bradley? They're not supposed to wear sidearms. I was wearing a sidearm. Okay, it's very, very important from an identification standpoint. Okay, GungHo. So my theory was if you raise the second flag, the likelihood of you being in the GungHo photo is very, very probable. And it is. That's because they all are in the GungHo photo. So I'm just going to point them out real quick here. You have Ira Hayes, okay, Franklin Sousley, you have Mike Strank, you have Harold Schultz, you have Harold Pikeller, and then behind Hank Hansen you have some guy's head. All right? So Harlan Block wasn't in it when I originally started looking at this material. Harlan Block's not there. Okay, how many photographers were on top of Mount Suribachi on February 23rd, 1945? It's almost 10, all right? Standing next to Joe Rosenthal is an Army photographer by the name of George Burns. George Burns provided 2 photos of the exact same event within 5 feet of Joe Rosenthal. He's to Joe's left. So you can actually see the face of this individual behind Hank Hansen, and it's Harlan Block. Okay, this is, we call it the post-GungHo photo. This was not in Bradley's book, but it was available on the history website of the U.S. Marine Corps. So this is after they're breaking up. They're going to start tying ropes to the flag, et cetera, et cetera. This photo is instrumental in identifying Pye and also in identifying Sousley and where Sousley is on the flag. So I'm just going to point to a couple things here. Open canteen cover. Did we see that prior? Yeah, we did, didn't we? That's actually a pair of wire cutters, not a sidearm. Additionally, see this little tool right there? Brent thought that originally, and I asked Greg the same question. What do you think that is, Greg? He goes, I bet you that's a spool for a handle. And I said, that's exactly what I thought it was. But it's not. For all of those enthusiasts, what do you think that is? You should know. What is this little tool right there?
It's a grenade launcher.
Heck yes, it's a grenade launcher. That's what Sousley has on his belt. It's not a belt spool that Brent thought it was or Greg thought it was. Okay. Then we have Pye. This is identified as Pye, always been Pye. What you see different about Pye, first and foremost, you see bandoliers going from right shoulder to left hip. He's actually wearing 2 bandoliers. Bandoliers is what you put your clips in for your ammo for your M1 Garand. Okay, he's wearing field suspenders. He is wearing his wool dress shirt, and that wool dress shirt is longer and elongated coming out of his utility jacket. It's going to be instrumental in identifying Harold Pikeller. Okay, this is the flag exchange photo taken by Bob Campbell, one of the other photographers. Actually, Bob went up with Bill Janoust and with Joe Rosenthal that day on Mount Suribachi after the first flag had already been raised. So this debunks this particular photo, and this is why it was released by the Marine Corps many, many years ago, is because it debunked the fact that it was a staged shot. It was done for the press. Nah, it wasn't done for the press. They wanted a larger flag to go up, and they wanted to take the larger flag down because lots of different people wanted that flag, okay? So from my standpoint, back in 2014, I had a real strong feeling that that's the number 2 position, and that is not Rainey Gagnon. I'll show you pictures here of Rainey Gagnon here in a moment, but you know, identifying marks is he was smaller, just a smaller gentleman. Pikeller was 5'9", 190, correct? Bulky, bigger Marine. You'll see pictures of him here in a moment. So here, I saw a bigger Marine. The reason they released this is because this is as fuzzy as all get up. You really can't see faces again. But what I can see is I can see a shirt coming out, his wool dress shirt. And we'll also I see bandoliers. All right? All right, the FBI was very, very excited about being able to identify butt cheeks. That's why I have this down here. All right, butt cheeks are very, very important. This is Phil Ward. Phil Ward was in the GungHo photo. Phil Ward helped raise the first flag. The Marines had never identified who the person in the soft cap who was kind of helping Schreier orchestrate was. It's actually Phil Ward. And the reason we're able to tell that, one is facial recognition. The FBI actually did the facial recognition. But also, in the first flag raising, I'll show you that in here in a moment, that's Ward's right butt cheek. And in his back pocket, I think it's a glove, but it's something. He has something in his right butt cheek. There is a picture of, and I'll show you the picture in a moment, the flag steadying raising photo of Sousley, and you can see the same item. He's taken his webbing off, but you can see the item in his back pocket. All right, first flag raising. Okay, this happened 10:30 in the morning. 30 minutes, some say an hour, some say an hour and a half, some people say 2 hours before the second flag and the first flag were exchanged. Okay, so here we have multiple Marines and one corpsman with his Unit 3 bag. Okay, let's look at the next picture. Same grouping. I'm going to go through them real quick. Chuck Lindbergh, flamethrower, from North Dakota. Howard Snyder, killed in action. We're going to see a great picture of Howard Snyder here in a moment. Doc Bradley, right? That's Doc Bradley with his hands in the first flag. We have Phil Ward. We have Ernest Boots Thomas. We have Hank Hansen. It is parachute boots. And this is Raymond Jacobs. Okay, who's this? This is the number 4 Marine. So when the Hooley Board, which is the board that convened by the Marine Corps in 2016, and then the Bauer Board is the one that identified Pye and Gagnon and a bunch of other people. This is the number 4 Marine. So you can imagine at this point in time, the Marines want to get this right, don't they? They want to make sure that they got everyone identified properly. So we were help the Marines through that process. So this is actually, oh my gosh, this is actually a frame from Janaus's footage, live footage, where you can see the lower jaw and cheeks of the number 4 Marine. This is PostGungHo. Notice his hat, it's really curved, okay? So when I look at this chin and that chin, kind of a growth on his mustache, I call it his Popeye chin. Okay, I looked at this and I could tell right away, that's Mike Strank, okay? So the next, we don't have a lot of young kids in the crowd, but if you watch Janaus's footage, and I would recommend each and every one of you just to go to YouTube and just search on Janaus's film footage and watch it. It's pretty cool. So in this film footage, when you see Strank, the majority of the time as they're doing, okay, we're going to celebrate, all rifles go up. He has his thumbs in his pockets, utility pockets. So he's like this the entire time. Okay, right before it breaks, before they move away from the GungHo photo, you'll see Mike Strank, and his left hand will come out of his utility jacket, and it'll move towards his manhood. All right, and I'm going to show you that right now, and it's hilarious. Okay, entire time his thumbs are in his utility pocket, and on one of the oorahs, he went boom. He went right through it. Okay. This is the post-GungHo photo. We've already seen this photo, right? Pikeller, Mike Strank. Who do you think they're staring at? One another. What do you think Mike Strank is doing with his left hand again? Boys will be boys. Okay? It's just hilarious. I found that very hilarious. Okay, there's a close-up. This close-up is critical in the identifying of Sousley. I actually was involved in the process, didn't get any credit, don't need it. But there's the grenade launcher, the open canteen cover, and the wire cutters. Then from just body, he was a string bane from Kentucky. This is the flag steadying photo taken by Joe Rosenthal. This was never released. Okay, I'll talk about conspiracies here in a moment. There were photos that were suppressed. Obviously, this one was suppressed. And the reason why, if you watch the footage, we can identify. This is actually number 1. Pye's already gone. He's picking up stones. This is the number 3 position, supposedly Doc Bradley. That's not Doc Bradley. It's Franklin Sousley. Mike Strank behind him, then you see Ira Hayes. So the four-man group that brought up the second flag, another controversial viewpoint by myself, basically we have a picture of who is in the number 3 position, and it's not Doc Bradley. Okay, but when am I going to talk about Pie? Hopefully soon. There's Pie right there. Okay, there's Kay's dad. Okay, 2 bandoliers. He's wearing field suspenders. His collar is unique, very, very unique. We'll show here in a moment. So this was, I started looking at this, I knew in 2014, it's Harold Pikeller in the number 2 position. Okay, this is framed footage from Janous's movie. Okay, this is number 2, number 3. Strank back there now is in the number 4, because he's at the end of the flag. This is Harold Schultz, was Southly at one point in time. That's Ira Hayes. Okay, look at it. I'll show you some pictures of Rainey Gagnon, but looking at this, I knew again, that is not Rainey Gagnon, that's Harold Pikeller. Another photo from Janous. Here's the number 2 position. He's got a drag in his mouth. Does that look like your dad? Yeah, it looks like your dad because it is your dad. Okay? So in 2016, I'm working with a gentleman from Ireland, passionate about the Marine Corps, named Stephen Foley. He and a gentleman from Omaha identified Harold Schultz back in 2016, moving Franklin Southly up to Doc Bradley's position. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm trying to get the buy-in of my buddy from Ireland. I'm in Kansas City, August of 2016, and he emails me and says, I agree with you, it's Harold Pikeller. And we did it based upon these 3 photos. This is the Bob Campbell exchange photo, Bob Campbell PostGungHo, and then Janous's footage. Okay, point out some things out. The bandoliers, field suspenders. Look at his collar, look at his collar. Okay, so at this point in time, I knew it was Harold Pike. Well, I knew it was a long time ago, but I have someone else who's agreeing with me. That's Harold Pikeller. Okay, so August of 2016, we said, okay, we have what we need, and actually we didn't have what we need. Because if I would have went to the Marine Corps with these 3 pictures, they would have laughed at me and said, nah, yeah, it could be, but it may not be. So we needed more evidence. And that's where Stephen Foley really stepped up and contributed to the identification of Pie. So he went photo searching. This photo is a photo you saw in the Des Moines Register. This was taken by George Burns. Okay, George Burns, it is recognizing the 2 Marines that first moved over the crest of Mount Suribachi on February 23rd. It's Howard Schneider, killed in action, and Harold Pikeller. It's documented. So this is a staged photo. George Burns says, okay, who went up over the top of the crest? Okay, you 2, let's take it. And then he wrote down their names. So we know that this is Harold Pikeller because Burns documented as such. July of 2017 is when we secured this particular photo, also taken by Bob Campbell, and also suppressed for obvious reasons. We call it the salute photo. That makes sense, right? You have Harold Schreier and Ernst Booth Thomas. After the 1 flag is already gone, 2's going up, and we have the number 2 individual moving off the flag to go pick up stones, and we have a visual of number 3. And we can see their faces. That's why they were suppressed. All right? Now I'm going to do a side-by-side. Okay, I'm going to point out lots of different things here. Okay, first of all, if you look at the crease in the helmets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You got a little knot here. There's the knot right there. On his temple, there's this temple. If you look at the pattern, there's Asia right there, there's Asia right there. Bottom line, it's the exact same pattern. The way he tied his bandoliers in the back, you notice that? So here we go. Tying his 2 bandoliers in the back, tying his 2 bandoliers in the back. Collar is spot on. I don't know how more spot on you could get. Okay, field suspenders, face is identical. He's got a drag right here in his on the right side of his mouth. Arm to the teeth. What does he have in his pocket? Left utility pocket. He's got a grenade, right? So this is Harold Pikeller. This was pretty easy for the Marines to say, yeah, you are right. It is Harold Pikeller is actually in the picture. All right? Cool pictures taken by Lou Lowry. Lou Lowry was the one that took most of the pictures of the first flag raising. So when the first flag goes up, that's when the Japanese come out. They're pretty pissed at this point in time because we just raised their flag. And they had interaction, meaning a battle ensued that was squelched pretty quickly. Pikeller is not close to the first flag raising. He's off protecting. So this is a flamethrower by the name of Good, and that's Pikeller. There's Pi basically 2 seconds or 3 seconds before that. Notice the way the bandoliers are tied. So this is for him from his right, where we usually see him from the left. Okay, and I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna try to speed up here a little bit. I'm taking way too much time. So on the day that my Irish buddy agreed with me that this is Harold Pikeller is the day where I figured out finally where Randy Gagnon is. It hit me. I'm in Kansas City at a meeting, and on my way home, I visualized this particular photo. And I remember there's an individual at the end of the first flag who doesn't look very large. And that's because it's Randy Gagnon. Randy Gagnon is credited with taking the first flag down Mount Suribachi after they exchanged the flag. So this is Randy Gagnon in this particular position. This is Randy Gagnon on the bond tour. Bond tour raised how much money in 1945? Anyone throw out a number?
5 million.
5 million. Anyone else? 20 million? Huh?
20 million.
Okay, keep going. No. $26.5 billion in 1945 currency, not in today's currency. They raised on the bond tour $26.5 billion. Very, very important. That's why, to identify the Marines, to get those 3 Marines, 1 corpsman, out in front of the public was instrumental in raising that amount of money. Okay, so that's Randy Gagnon. Again, really small stature, chest, shoulders, chest. I already said chest and the waist. Okay, this is the photo we just looked at, and this is another photo that I correctly identified that this was Randy Gagnon. This was taken by Bob Campbell. I'll show you this picture here in a moment. He's smoking. Okay. Here's facial recognition. Here's Randy Gagnon on the 7th Bond Tour. Here he is smoking. I call it the smoking photo. Okay. When I'm showing this to my son Hank, February 2017, I'm looking at these photos, and my son looks at me and goes, "Dad, he's got a mole on his right cheek." I'm like, "Holy cow, he's got a mole on his right cheek." And actually, you can actually see the mole somewhat. The FBI said you really couldn't see it, but it's there. This is a picture. That's the Bob Campbell exchange photo. This is a picture taken in 1951 by Life magazine of his family when they're getting ready to go about the memorial sculpture. Here's another photo of him on the bond tour. What's funny about this particular photo is that for some reason his mole's gone. I don't know why that is. Okay, this is from the left. Left profile, right profile, same dude. And the FBI agreed that this is actually Randy Gagnon. Okay, here is the other photo taken by Bob Campbell. And I put another photo in. You may have seen this photo before, but that's Doc Bradley right there. There's another corpsman. That's Janoust. That's Rosenthal. That's George Burns. And obviously the gentleman taking the photo is Bob Campbell. So this photo here is either taken seconds before that or seconds after that. And here we have Randy Gagnon smoking. This got his K-bar. I thought, we're talking, he's right-handed. So I'm right-handed. Do I smoke like this? Yeah, that makes sense. But you can see him here. And this is Randy Gagnon on the set of Sands of Iwo Jima. And you could see where he's holding his cigarette. It's identical to where he's holding it there. Okay, this is Felix de Walden, who is the artist who did the Marine Memorial out in Arlington, Virginia. So here, Gagnon's sitting for the facial standpoint of his number 2 position. Okay, remember that I talked about his mole on his right cheek. Okay, this is the left profile, and we got a mole on his left cheek. I can't figure this out. Okay, who here can solve the puzzle? Holy cow. Okay, that's backwards. Okay, they flipped it. Why they flipped it, I have no idea. Why we saw a photo earlier with his right mole gone, I have no idea. Okay, I'm going to read these real quick. One's dated April 6th of 1945. Lone Marine survivor of Iwo photo due home. Okay. Young Gagnon, who lives with his mother, Miss Irene Gagnon in Manchester, said he would rather face another operation than make a bond tour. April 6th of 1945. 3 days later, the AP releases another article. Manchester Marine who raised Iowa flag says 3 have died. He goes on to identify Ira Hayes and Doc Bradley as other flag raisers. So from my standpoint, they presented 1, and 1 out of 6 was not going to look very good on the bond tour. That's my viewpoint. I don't know if the Marines will have the same, but these 2 articles to me kind of tells you what happened. Okay, that's Pye with his 2 cousins, the Langs, right? Okay, so we have Wally and Merle Lang, just a great photo. This probably was taken 1943, you think, Kay? This probably wasn't when he was on leave. He's younger here. Okay. Greatest generation, right? This is Kay's brother Ken, born February 15 of 1945, the day they embark to go to Iwo Jima and land on the 19th. Okay? It's pretty cool, huh? So that's it. Questions at all?
Was it in the story about when they did the Pacific 10 parts? Wasn't it said that there was some congressman or senator out on the beachhead with all the big boys, and he told them that he wanted that first flag?
Secretary of the Navy Forrestal was with Howland Smith, and they were together on the ship. And the rumors, there's multiple rumors. The rumors, he said, "I want that flag." Chandler Johnson, who was the battalion commander of the 28th Marines, said, this is what was said by Severance, Lieutenant Severance, is no way that's what Chandler Johnson said. Chandler Johnson is from where? Fort Dodge, Iowa. Fort Dodge. Okay, he died. Mortar hit him on Iwo Jima and he passed. Yes, sir.
Did you do any digitizing of these photos, or were they all raw?
Okay, I'll talk about my relationship with the Marines. So in 2014, I knew who Southley was. I put together my evidence, and I sent my evidence to the chief deputy of the Marine History Museum. His name was Charles Melson. And I also sent it to my distant cousin, Paul Westemeyer, who's actually in the book. He's actually a contributor. Melson said, "Thank you for your interest. See ya, Brent, you're crazy like everyone's crazy who looks at these photos." And my distant cousin, Paul Westermeyer, didn't say a thing to me, okay? So I had identified Southley, and they wanted nothing to do with me. Now, so it was very important for us to get this right this time, and that's where Dustin Spence, his name was mentioned earlier, that's why he was so critical. We needed an in. He's based in California. He's been a huge advocate of the Marine Corps for years, and he knows a lot of generals. That's the way we were able to get this information to them. So to answer your question, I get a call from Kyle Gentry, and Kyle Gentry is the Marine that's been given the task of doing all the research, and they came to us and said, "Okay, did you alter these photos in any way, shape, or form?" And so as Mike and Greg can attest to, as far as my technical abilities, very limited, correct? We couldn't get this file from my computer, so bottom line is I have no technical skills. So all I had was the picture and the ability to zoom. That was it. Okay? But they wanted to know that. What technology do you have, Brent? I have nothing. I have a Mac Pro. I just look at the pictures. Okay, so we did not do anything to the photos other than zoom in. Yes, sir.
Explain again how your findings here match up with Bradley's book, or how that's done.
Okay, at the time Bradley's book was written, he thought, and everyone thought, that his father was in that flag photo. So again, the time that book was written, this had already been changed. The DeVal Board in 1947 changed this from Hank Hansen to Harlan Block. That's correct. Rainey Gagnon, Doc Bradley. Mike Strank, Franklin Sousley, Ira Hayes. So at the time that he wrote the book, the identifications were correct as we knew it at that point in time. That's the second flag raising right here, okay? And Doc is on the first flag raising in the picture I showed you later, okay? In 2016, the Marines officially moved Sousley up from here to here. Remember the open canteen cover, the wire cutters, et cetera, beam pole, and now we can see his face in the flag standing photo. So they move Sousley into the proper position and Doc's off. And his son's humiliated by writing the book. He did what was right at that point in time. And that's when they identify Harold Schultz. Brent Westemeyer had zero to do with identifying Harold Schultz. That was Stephen Foley and a gentleman by the name of Eric Krell from Omaha, Nebraska. Those are the two individuals who identified Schultz. I had nothing to do with that. And then now all we're doing is we're switching out Gagnon in the number 2 position and putting in Harold Pikeller. Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to talk to any of the other family members of these men to hear their stories?
Okay, so there is a family here today from Council Bluffs, Iowa. The Schultzkys. You know, Bob, can you stand up, please? Bob's dad was a second lieutenant in Easy Company and was in charge of the machine gun mortar platoon, and was an officer and was the last officer to be killed under Severance's tutelage at Iwo Jima. And Bob was born 2 months after his father passed. All right. So I was looking at the GungHo photo. This Marine's never been identified. And so there's been many, many families that came forth and said, that looks a heck of a lot like my dad, that looks a heck of a lot like my dad. So this is my last really adventure. I really try to find out who that is. And looking at pictures of Bob's dad, they look remarkably alike. And so I approached them and was able to get to know Bob Schultzky. Bob Schultzky, his mom remarried, and his father was never really spoken of. So when I approached him, they went to the Foot Locker and he re-engaged. Even though he'd never met his father, he got to know his father. Other than that, Kay does not claim to know me.
I love you for figuring all this out.
Yes, sir.
What effect on the monument is what you see?
Zero. When the Marines built that, they didn't want any names attached to it. They may have had reasons for that. But they wanted that to represent the Corps. Every Marine who's ever served, help me here, history from 17, Greg, help me out, Greg, 17, yeah, all the way to today. So that doesn't impact that memorial at all. It represents all Marines, even though it's depicting the second flag raising in Iwo Jima. Very good question.
Is Dustin Spencer and Stephen Foley alive?
Yes, Dustin Spence is probably 15 years younger than me, spry. He lives in California, right outside of San Francisco, California. And Stephen Foley is my age, maybe 2 or 3 years younger. Interesting cat. He's been my pen pal for the last 5 years. My wife, she goes, who is this Colette Foley that keeps emailing you? It's a long-distance relationship. He lives in Wexford, Ireland, which is on the southern tip, I believe, of Ireland. Foley and I were seeing the exact same thing with Sousley as Bradley, because they say he was seeing what I was seeing. Dustin Spence was not seeing what I was seeing, because I had a phone call with him back in 2014 trying to convince him that it wasn't Doc Bradley, that it was Sousley, and he had nothing to do with me. Spence was instrumental in having the connection to the Marine Corps, because if I sent another email to the Marine Corps again, they would probably find out where I lived and do something to me. Sir, you had a question?
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
My wife and her sister are here today because their father was in the 5th Battalion and was, according to him, about 15 feet behind Rosenthal when he took that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So,
survived the military and has since died.
Yeah. When you see pictures of how many, well, the 40-man patrol went up led by Harold Schreier, but they were all around. And so basically, when they went up secured, made sure, and actually nothing happened on the way up. So there actually was a 4-man patrol led by Sergeant Watson earlier in the morning, They went up almost to the crest and said, okay, this is how you get up. Came back down, reported to Chandler Johnson. Chandler Johnson said, okay, Schreier, get your 40-man patrol, go up, take that mountain, and here, by the way, here's a flag. If you get there, and he says, if you get there, raise that damn flag. Yes, sir.
How did you connect with Mr. Foley? And is there a network?
Yeah, iwojima.com. No, that's it. So I see these pictures, and I've come to a conclusion in my mind about Sousley and Doc Bradley's position, and all of a sudden I go to the Iwo Jima site, and I'm just reading through all the comments, and some guy just out of the blue, he's seeing what I'm seeing. So again, now I start going to the net, and I go to the net trying to find a Stephen Foley. I found multiple attorneys, Stephen Foley's, in both Wisconsin and Minnesota, which made a great deal of sense because it's close to where Doc Bradley grew up. All right, so I left a post, and then he left a post with his email address and said, Brent, please contact me. And so we started contacting at that point in time, connecting with one another. He and I both knew that Sousley was in Doc Bradley's position. Then he was connected with the gentleman, Eric Krell, who runs the 5th Marine website out of Omaha. That's why he connected with him, and the two of them made the discovery of Harold Schultz in the number 5 position. Yes, sir. Go ahead, you finish it?
And are there other great mysteries that are being solved about this or any other part of it?
Well, from a controversy standpoint, I'll go through them real quick. Only one flag was raised. Obviously, that's not true. The Marine never tried to say that only one flag was raised. The second flag stage was staged for the press. No, not true. Who raised the second and first? We know that today. Why didn't Rosenthal solicit and document the flag raisers' names? It was live action. He wasn't going to go and say, okay, who's on that flag? He wasn't going to do it. Now, I'll tell you why. Lou Lowry didn't do it. Lou Lowry didn't say, okay, everyone's on the first flag raising, tell me what your name is. They just didn't do that. Who carried the second flag up Mount Suribachi? The Marine Corps today still gives credit to Rainey Gagnon. I don't believe Rainey Gagnon carried up the flag. It was the 4-man patrol that was set up. And both he and Doc Bradley and Ira Hayes said the 4-man patrol brought up the flag. Who provided the second flag to the Marines? The controversy around that. A Coast Guard ship said it was given to Rainey Gagnon, and they also gave him a pole, and Rainey Gagnon took that pole up the mountain on Mount Suribachi. It's actually a false story. It came from LST 779, a Navy transport. The big question today is 5 survivors, either flag raisers or non-flag raisers, so I'll go through them. Pikeller and Harold Schultz, alive. Never said squat to anybody. Rainey Gagnon, alive. Not on the second flag raising. Helped lower number 1 and take it down the mountain. Doc Bradley on the first flag, not on the second flag raising. Ira Hayes at the very end, all Ira Hayes could correct was Harlan Block for Hank Hansen. He knew the other 2 individuals weren't on the flag. So you have 5 survivors, and none of them are telling the truth. It's not that they're not telling the truth. This is my viewpoint. Schreier, where to do my clicker? Schreier gave in the DeVal board, basically they asked him, do you think that Hank Hansen's not at the base, and do you think that that is Harlan Block? Okay. Harold Schreier said, gave an affidavit, says, I was so concerned about the lowering of number 1, I never ever looked at number 2. Okay. Here he is saluting number 2. And oh, by the way, there's Harold Pikeller, a Marine Raider, Carlson Raider. Harold Schreier, Marine Raider, Carlson Raider. All right. So President Roosevelt gives the order on March 30th of 1945 and says, bring the flag raisers back. Anyone who survived, bring them back for the bond tour. Pi had already written his family, written Ruby, Kay's mother, saying, I helped plant the flag, and I was pretty excited about it. Okay. Once he got home, don't ever say another word about that. So people in Brooklyn knew. So bottom line is, what I think happened is that you had Marines, and I can't understand a Marine's passion for his brotherhood, because I never experienced it. Are there any Marines in the building today? I know there's one right here. Any other Marines? Badasses, right? Would you leave your 5th Marines? Where were they going next? They were going to Japan. All right. No, 5th Marines were not going to Okinawa because they just. Yeah, but they were going to go on to Japan. So you have a warrior, and this guy was a warrior. Guadalcanal, Midway, Bougainville, injured on Bougainville. Iwo Jima. God, I can't pronounce it. Anyway, and this guy was a warrior. So you're being summoned back to D.C. Hell no. Hell no. Okay. Harold Schultz. Hell no. Ira Hayes. Hell no. So a runner, Rainey Gagnon, wasn't well liked. People did not like him. Good-looking guy, 19 years old. It made sense to fill in the blanks. Again, I can't see faces. We can throw any name on there we want. And I think that's what happened. Doc Bradley received the Naval Cross for his actions on February 21st of 1945. Naval Cross recipient, injured in battle, in a hospital bed on Hawaii, and all of a sudden he's ordered to go to D.C. to say that he was on the second flag. What's also interesting is he had to be placed. The reason he had to be placed is why? Go back to the original photo. Okay, what can't a corpsman have? He's not going to be. Yeah, he's not going to be killing a rifle at all. All right. So they already said this is Hank Hansen. Okay, Strank doesn't have a rifle, but you really can't tell. The number 3 position's not carrying a rifle. That's where they place Doc. Ira Hayes, the reason, I love the story. We've all heard the story, right? Ira Hayes says, I'll beat you up if you tell them that I was on the flag. I think he probably said that I think Rainey said that to officers in D.C., but I don't think that really happened. I think he was suffering big time from battle fatigue, and they knew that. So having him be the 3rd was probably the most likely. And they probably said, okay, 1 of 6 isn't going to work. Tell us the truth. How many are there? 3 out of 6. Give us 3. Give us those 3. So that's what I think happened. But again, that's all in my head. Yes, sir.
I missed it. I'm sure you said it. But do we know where either one or both of those flags are today?
Yes. They are both in Quantico, at the Military Museum there at the Marine Museum. I haven't gone yet. I do want to go, but they're both in that particular museum.
And I do know they switch them out. They'll have the first flag hanging for a while, then they switch it out, hang the second flag for a while, and back and forth.
Yes, sir. That's my plan.
That way, is Brooklyn the community flag?
Nope, had nothing to do with it. Yeah. Isn't that great, though? Back in 2014, when I started staying to Stephen Foley, it's Pikeller. I said, by the way, he's from Brooklyn, Iowa. And by the way, that's the city of flags. How ironic is that? So no, it had nothing to do with that. Again, Pi, when he came home, said, Ruby, you don't say a word. Kids never knew. I'm sure people in the community knew. We actually know that someone knew because someone wrote in a company program newsletter that, Pi helped plant the flag. And I'm sure he was just, no, I didn't do that. Don't tell anyone I did that, but it was published. Yes, sir.
How did it make the pole stay in the ground?
I thought about that last night when I was looking at it. I really have no idea, because when you look, there's multiple pictures of the first flag. That first flag pole was probably 38 feet tall. And I don't know how they did it. There was no ropes on that particular one. The second flag was probably 20-some feet, but it was a bigger, thicker pole on the second flag. That you'll see later in other photographs. There's actually one rope that's already been tied in the GungHo photo, but they tied it and they secured it with rocks at the base. And that flag had to be hitting winds of 40, 50 miles an hour at time on top of Mount Suribachi. So I don't have a clue, and it's baffled me as well.
If it wasn't staged, why was there a second flag raising?
So there's 2 theories as to why that is. Secretary of the Navy Forrestal saying, I want that flag. and Chandler Johnson saying, no, you're not going to get that flag. I'm going to keep that flag. Get a second flag, go raise it. The theory, that's one theory. The other theory is that when it was raised, and it was a flag about this big, you couldn't see it, okay? So Chandler Johnson, the other theory, is he said, get me a damn bigger flag because I want to raise that, and that's when he sent the 4-man patrol up with the second flag. And what Ira Hayes says in his letter to Mrs. Block's mother in 1946 is, we want to make goddamn sure that the Marines on the north side of that island can see that flag. So that's why the exchange happened. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, but just so I'm clear, that's the second raising?
That is the second flag raising. Okay. I'll just real quick.
Where is Pie?
Okay, I'll show you here. That's the first flag raising. And there's really no photo that we know of that Lou Lowry took where it actually was being raised. But we saw them as they're milling around moments before, and we see it right after. And Doc Bradley is definitely on the first flag. And where is Pie in the famous photo? That's Pie's knee, that's Pie's head, and that's Pie's bandoliers. It's one of the equipment identifications to help me say, okay, that's not Randy Gagnon. Actually, Randy Gagnon, it does have a bandolier on him, but not the way Pie was wearing it. And again, when you see the whole footage, when you see the number 2 position, you see him, he's big. Pie, and then Gagnon was tiny.
There is a photo that another photographer took that was a head-on photo, and in that photo you can see Dad's face and the bandoliers and really be able to tell it's...
That is this photo right here.
Yeah.
The salute photo. Again, suppressed. The reason it was suppressed because of the fact that you could see number 2 and number 3's faces. This photo actually, another recommendation if you want to go out and watch a real short documentary about Bill Janoust. Bill Janoust was killed in action on March 4th in 1945. He was at a cave entrance. There's different stories. Either he went in or they shot him and they pulled him in. But they almost immediately detonated the cave opening, and he is still lying on Iwo Jima today. In fact, I was flying in 2007. I actually was fortunate enough to sit next to the superintendent of the MIA in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I was reading the book. And the reason I was reading the book again is because the movie had come out, and I was flying to Guam, and so he saw the book, and that's when I told him. I started talking about this. So anyway. Any other questions? I was supposed to speak for 30 minutes.